For my thoughts on all the latest happenings in the NFL in a completely relaxed, unscripted format, be sure to check out my channel, JG9 News. And now, on with our feature presentation. Bart Starr is one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the sport. I think everyone who knows the history of the game and knows football has him, at minimum, as one of the top 15 signal callers to ever exist. And without him, the Green Bay Packers dynasty of the 1960s, simply put, does not exist. No one's got a bad thing to say about Starr as a player, as there's a reason why his number 15 jersey is retired in the organization. He made it into the Pro Football Hall of Fame on the first ballot, and rightfully so. He won the MVP of 2 Super Bowls. He guided the Packers to 5 NFL championship wins. He led the NFL in completion percentage 4 times. He led the NFL in passer rating 4 times. And he was just a great quarterback in every sense of the word. Safe to say, Bart Starr is not just a Packer legend, but an NFL legend as well. And if you want to learn more about some iconic players and people throughout the history of the NFL, like Bart Starr, as in the man associated with this team behind me right here, then this is the place for you, because we talk about all things NFL history all the time on this channel and post every single day. So if you like that sort of stuff, be sure to hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Thanks in advance for your support as we try and reach 60,000 subscribers and really grow this community. However, as a head coach, look, there are tons of guys who are great quarterbacks who try to become a head coach and fail miserably. For instance, Norm Van Brocklin, who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, was a great quarterback and was one of the top signal callers of the 1950s. As a head coach, however, he was abysmal and just looked to pick fights every chance he could. And Bart Starr is another one of those guys who, as qualified as he was to be a quarterback, was just as unqualified to be a head coach, especially for 9 seasons, and especially with a 52-76-3 record, 0 seasons with more than 8 wins, and 0 playoff appearances in non-strike shortened seasons. He made some terrible decisions off the field, including bringing a whip in order to motivate the black players on the team, which went about as well as you'd expect. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. He made some terrible decisions on the field, including a running play on 4th and 9 up the middle in the I formation in a game against the New York Giants on Monday Night Football, which, shocker, went about as well as you'd expect. And you can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And he also made some terrible decisions when it came to his treatment of the media, where he decided that his best strategy was to be Norm Van Brocklin on steroids. Because imagine a coach threatening a reporter for having the audacity to, do his job. And that's what we've got today. Because this is the story behind one of the dumbest moments and one of the stupidest moments of Bart Starr's otherwise legendary career. Before I talk about the controversy surrounding Bart Starr in the 1980 offseason and what made no sense about it, we need some context to understand this man right here, and the situation regarding Green Bay's coaching staff. In 1979, the offensive line staff consisted of 2 people. The offensive line coach was this man right here, Bill Curry. He was a former Packer who played under Starr, and he was manning an offensive line in Green Bay that definitely wasn't anything to write home about by any means, but it didn't matter, because it's not like Curry's job was in any jeopardy. And heading into the 1980 season, the plan was to have Curry come back as the offensive line coach, with Ernie McMillan as the assistant offensive line coach, just as had been the case in 1979 and the year before in 1978. However, as you can probably tell from these clips, Curry received the opportunity of a lifetime when he was asked to be the new head coach of his alma mater, Georgia Tech. The Yellow Jackets had a vacancy after they fired Pepper Rogers, their head coach for the last 6 seasons, following a disappointing 1979 campaign, and that led to an extremely messy divorce that played out in court and is not relevant to the story at all. Regardless, being a head coach for your alma mater, especially when said alma mater is a Division I school, is a heck of a lot more appealing than being an offensive line coach. So to the surprise of no one, this man right here, Bill Curry, bolted the Packers at the start of the 1980 offseason to go coach at Georgia Tech. Which raises the question, with this man right here out of the fold, what were the Packers going to do on the offensive line? Simple. They were going to promote Ernie McMillan from assistant offensive line coach to offensive line coach, and they were going to hire a new assistant offensive line coach. And the man they settled on was this man right here, Tom Laveau. Laveau had spent the past 3 seasons coaching the offensive line at Stanford, and was on Bill Walsh's coaching staff in 1977 and 1978 when Stanford finished the season ranked inside the AP Top 20. Laveau was also no spring chicken, having been involved in coaching in some capacity for over a decade, most notably as the head coach of the Utah Utes from 1974 to 76, even though his head coaching stint was an absolute disaster where the Utes went 5-28 across the 3 seasons, as Laveau compiled an abysmal winning percentage of 15%. Still, Laveau was more than qualified to coach an offensive line, and this seemed like a really solid hire on the surface, especially for an assistant offensive line coach. And with that, on January 31st, 1980, the Green Bay Press-Gazette correctly and accurately reported, like a lot of other outlets, that the Green Bay Packers were hiring Tom Laveau as their next assistant offensive line coach. I'm not going to show any clips for this one. I'm just going to have the article on the screen for you to look at and read, because this will become super important. Nothing about this article seems noteworthy or absurd to you, right? Nothing about this seems bizarre or out of the ordinary for a coach getting hired. The first paragraph talks about what happened. Simply put, the Packers hired Tom Laveau. The second paragraph says where he was before coming to Green Bay. The third paragraph says why he got hired, because there was a void after Ernie McMillan got promoted. The fourth paragraph says how many other vacancies currently exist on the staff. And then, every paragraph afterwards talks about his career in chronological order, from his playing days at Utah to his coaching days in the CFL and at various colleges, and makes note of his head coaching stint at Utah. In other words, this is a pretty standard article that tells you everything you need to know. It's not flashy by any means, but it gets the point home across perfectly. So why do I bring this article up? Because one man somehow took exception to this. And that man, as you might have been able to guess, was none other than this man right here, Green Bay Packers head coach Bart Starr. Because he was livid about this article and was fuming at the writer who wrote it, a man by the name of Tony Wolter. Keep in mind, at no point in the article that you just read did Wolter get any facts wrong. Tom Laveau was, in fact, hired by the Packers. At no point did Wolter insert his opinion into the piece. At no point did he take any quotes completely out of context. Heck, the article doesn't even contain a quote. And the news wasn't leaked by Wolter when the Packers didn't want it getting out. The reason why Bart Starr was upset at Tony Wolter? I kid you not, it's because there was a mention to the fact that he was the head coach at Utah and went 5-28. Again, all the article said about his stint at Utah was his teams compiled a 5-28 mark and he was fired after 3 years. That is a completely normal statement to put in an article about a coach who just got hired. You bring up his coaching history. It's not like this was out of place whatsoever. Literally every good article and informative article about a coach getting hired will tell you where they were before this and their most notable stint. If I was writing for the Associated Press, and after Billy Napier inevitably gets fired at Florida, the Jacksonville Jaguars hire him to be their next offensive coordinator for some reason, of course I'm going to put in the article that he was most recently the head coach at Florida and compile the record of insert record here, whatever the heck it is. It's what you do. But apparently, you couldn't say that Tom Laveau went 5-28 as the head coach at Utah. In the eyes of Bart Starr, bringing that up is like mentioning Voldemort's name. You don't do it. We don't talk about Bruno And we don't talk about the fact that Tom Laveau went 5-28 as the head coach at Utah. In the eyes of Bart Starr, it should not be common knowledge that Tom Laveau went 5-28 as the head coach at Utah. In case you didn't know by this point, Tom Laveau went 5-28 as the head coach at Utah. And what did Starr do after the reporter inserted the fact into his completely objective story that Tom Laveau went 5-28 as the head coach at Utah? He personally called up the reporter, calling Walter's house phone while he was off of work, and vented at him for including the fact that Tom Laveau went 5-28 as the head coach at Utah. He tore into this reporter and complained to the high heavens that he had the audacity, in a story about a coaching hire, to include Tom Lavau's stint as the coach at Utah, and include the fact that Tom Laveau went 5-28 as the head coach at Utah. The next time you talk about one of our coaches, you will not, under any circumstances, mention the fact that Tom Laveau went 5-28 as the head coach at Utah. It's one thing to lash out at a reporter on the clock at a press conference, but to do it off the clock at their place of residence, all for telling the truth? Like, there was nothing subjective about that statement. There was nothing out of context or misplaced about that statement. There was nothing out of line about that statement. It's a coaching biography of Tom Laveau. Like, no crap you're going to include that. What do you want it to do? Literally, if you're this man right here in Bart Starr, what are we supposed to do? If a coach has a losing record, are we just supposed to hide that? You know those graphics they show before kickoff, where they show the head coach of the team on the sideline, and they show their win-loss record? If they have a losing record, do we just hide it? Pretend it doesn't exist? Like, what are we honestly doing here? Criticizing a media member at their place of residence for telling the truth, and not even in a hard-hitting way in an expose? Congratulations, Bart Starr. You just completely Streisand-affected yourself. Before you called out the media, people were just going to read the headline, maybe read the first few paragraphs, and then move on to something else, and not remember the fact, or even read the fact, that Tom Laveau went 5-28 as the head coach at Utah. Now, because of your actions, oh, you better believe that everyone is now wholly aware of the fact that Tom Laveau went 5-28 as the head coach at Utah. You turned a complete non-story into a story. So good job on that one, Coach Starr. Great idea on your end. And if you think a story like this seems too insane to believe, trust me, coaches can be kind of crazy like that, because I want to take this moment to unveil a personal story. I don't usually do this on this channel, at least. Sometimes on JJ News, but don't really go unscripted like this on a personal story. But something like this did happen to me in my broadcasting career back when I was in college. So where I went to college, I did a ton of games. I did over 200 games for the ESPN family of networks across all different sports. And this was back in 2016. Our school was playing another school in the conference, and we showed a shot of the head coach on the opposing team. And I brought up the fact that the coach got fired from the school that he was previously at, and now he was here. It was the usual puffery. It was something like, the coach, this is his second season with the team, third season with the team, whatever it was. He came here after getting fired from this school, and he's really got this school going in the right direction. I really like the way they're playing and the way they've looked all season. The recruiting's been pretty good. You know, the usual puffery that you do with stuff like that. Didn't think anything of it, and it was true. It was 100% true. The man got fired from the previous school. There were literal articles about the fact that he got fired from the last school that he was at. Well, fast forward to about a week later when I'm doing the next women's soccer game that is happening, and I get a message from the director of broadcasting for the entire operation. And he says, look, I don't agree with this whatsoever. I think this is dumb. I think this is really stupid. But I got a complaint from the coach who rewatched the footage. A game that they lost 4-0, mind you. They lost this game 4-0. He had bigger things to worry about. But I got a complaint from the coach that was really upset that you said that he was fired. And he doesn't want you to ever work another game, and he wants to get you removed. I went to bat for you because it was 100% true. There were articles you cited. I think it's bogus because it was a complete fact. But just something to keep in mind. And I was like, wait, oh my God, that is insane. I've never have that issue before. And again, the guy literally was fired. There are literal articles about the guy getting fired. And I didn't even harp on the fact. I just said in passing, after he got fired from this school, he went to the school he's at right now and he's got the program going in the right direction. And apparently that was too much. So, yeah, I 100% buy this story because coaches can be kind of crazy like that. And Bart Starr was definitely kind of crazy like that. For what it's worth, this coach that tried to get me kicked off of broadcasting forever on the opposing school, the coach that lost that game 4-0 to the school that I attended, that coach ended his career at that school with 1 winning record in his entire time with the program and 0 conference tournament finals, 0 conference tournament wins. They were not that good of a team. So, you know what? Maybe he had bigger things to worry about than worrying about a random 19-year-old reporting something that literally was brought up in a news article. Just some food for thought. As for this man right here, Tom Laveau actually had a great tenure in Green Bay. Even though he only spent 1 season there as the assistant offensive line coach before becoming the offensive line coach of the St. Louis Cardinals in 1981, Laveau became a fixture on Mike Holmgren's staff, getting hired by the Packers again a decade later in 1992, and being alongside Holmgren in Green Bay and Seattle for over a decade, being on the coaching staff when the Packers won their 3rd Super Bowl in franchise history, defeating the New England Patriots at Super Bowl 31. At the very least, Tom Lavau's tenure in Green Bay went a heck of a lot better than his time as the head coach in college, as Tom Laveau went 5-28 as the head coach at Utah. But when it comes to this man right here in Bart Starr, in all his stupidity and in all his arrogance as a head coach, it's hard to top this. It really is. It's hard to top criticizing a reporter for reporting on the facts, especially when the fact is merely a statement that can be proven to be 100% true and is purely meant to provide a biographical context to the man you just hired. Because what's the moral of the story here? The moral of the story is simple. Tom Laveau went 5-28 as the head coach at Utah. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.